Rain pelted the crumbling roof as thunder cracked across the sky. But inside the dark, decaying house, something stirred. Huddled in a corner behind a collapsed wooden beam, a frail, dirt-covered dog whimpered softly. Her ribs showed through her matted fur. She hadn't moved in hours. Water dripped from a broken pipe above her, forming a muddy puddle around her trembling paws. A boy on a bike skidded to a stop outside, noticing something through the shattered window. "Mom, there's a dog in there," he cried. His mother rushed over, peered inside, and gasped. "She's trapped," she whispered, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Sirens in the distance. A rescue call dispatched. The camera zooms in on the dog's hollow eyes, filled with fear, hunger, and a flicker of hope. By the time the first responder unit arrived, the storm had worsened. The dog hadn't moved an inch, her breath shallow and uneven. Officer Lila Monroe stepped cautiously through the creaking doorway, flashlight cutting through the darkness. "We've got a live one," she radioed. "Condition critical. Dog is conscious but barely." Her partner held back the boy and his mother. "Stay outside, it's not safe in there," he warned. Lila approached the animal slowly, speaking in a low, soothing tone. "Hey there, sweet girl. We're gonna get you out." The dog didn't respond. Her eyes locked on the beam of light, body frozen with fear. Debris shifted above them. A ceiling tile cracked. Time was running out. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, neighbors, passers-by, and a few rescue volunteers just arriving. The boy gripped his mother's coat, eyes locked on the front door. "Will she die?" he asked. The mother knelt beside him, brushing wet hair from his face. "Not if they get her in time," she whispered, though her eyes said otherwise. One of the rescue volunteers, a tall man named Mateo, arrived carrying medical supplies. "We need clearance to go in," he said. But the officer on site shook his head. "Too dangerous, floors unstable." Tension rippled through the team. The storm howled louder. A bolt of lightning cracked above them, illuminating the house's broken frame like a ghostly warning. Inside, Officer Monroe examined the structure. "If the ceiling comes down, we're both crushed," she muttered. She reached for her radio. "We need animal rescue, full team, and fast." The dog's breathing faltered. A hoarse whimper escaped her throat. Monroe edged closer, holding out a protein bar from her pocket. "Mon girl, take it. Show me you're still with us." The dog's nose twitched. She inched forward, her front paw dragging. A loud crack. Dust rained from above. Monroe ducked, shielding the dog with her body. "I need backup inside now," she screamed into the radio. Her voice shook, but her resolve did not. A rescue van screeched to a stop. Out jumped Dani, 28, female, petite, fierce-eyed, and Jordan, 35, muscular build, ex-firefighter. "Let's gear up," Dani said, slamming the van door. She grabbed a harness and oxygen mask. Monroe's inside alone. Jordan nodded grimly. And the dog's fading. Without hesitation, they sprinted toward the structure. Inside, Monroe coughed as dust thickened the air. "She's responsive." "Barely," she muttered as Dani crawled beside her. "Let's stabilize her," Dani said. Jordan braced the door open, scanning for signs of collapse. Their breath was fast, focus razor sharp. No more time to wait. The real fight was beginning. As Dani clipped a small oxygen mask over the dog's muzzle, Jordan positioned wooden braces against a sagging beam overhead. Officer Monroe, drenched and coughing, backed away to catch her breath. "She's still with us," Dani said, her voice firm but low. "Pulse is thready. She's going into shock." Jordan looked toward the front. "We don't have time. This structure is minutes from collapse." The dog gave a weak twitch, her eyes fluttering shut. No, stay with me," Dani whispered, gently stroking the dog's soaked fur. "You fought too long to quit now." Outside, more responders arrived with stretchers and tools. Every second counted. They couldn't afford hesitation anymore. Outside, team leader Dr. Nina Rhodes arrived, dressed in waterproof rescue gear, clipboard in hand. "Who's inside?" she asked sharply. Monroe, Donnie, Jordan, and the dog, an officer replied. Nina cursed under her breath. What's the structure rating? Red flag. Minutes max. Nina turned to the rescue engineer. You've got 2 minutes to give me a safe route in. He shook his head. There isn't one. Nina didn't flinch. Then make one. She radioed in. Donnie, Jordan, extraction plan now. Prep stretcher, use front window. We cut it. Inside, Jordan barked. You heard the doc. Clear that wall. Metal tools scraped. Glass shattered. This wasn't a standard rescue. It was triage in a war zone. Jordan slammed his shoulder against the wall beside the front window while Donnie shielded the dog from flying debris. Wood splintered, glass cracked, and with one final push, the opening widened just enough for a stretcher. Monroe crawled back in with a thermal blanket and shouted, We carry her through this. She won't make it. We don't have another option. Donnie snapped. The dog moaned faintly. Jordan looked at both women. Then we carry her with us. The three locked eyes. No debate. No second guessing. Monroe lifted the dog gently into the blanket as Donnie held the oxygen. Go! Jordan bellowed, climbing through the window first. The storm raged. The house groaned. Outside, the rescue team had cleared space for emergency transport. Dr. Rhodes held open the rear door of a waiting vehicle as the trio emerged. Danny cradled the dog's upper body while Jordan and Monroe supported her legs and spine. Easy, watch her side. Monroe barked. The moment they passed the caution tape, the house behind them groaned and finally gave way. With a terrible crash, the front half caved in. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Debris shot outward like shrapnel. But the team kept walking, unflinching, soaked to the bone, focused on the creature in their arms. Let's move, Nina ordered. Vet center, 5 minutes out. Drive like hell. Inside the vehicle, the heater hummed and the smell of wet fur and dirt filled the air. Danny pressed her ear to the dog's chest. Still breathing, faint. Jordan wiped mud from the dog's paw with a towel, careful not to disturb a raw wound on her leg. She's tougher than she looks, he said, voice shaking. Monroe sat quietly in the back, arms folded, staring ahead. She didn't panic, not once, like she knew we were her only shot. Danny whispered, because she's been through worse. This wasn't her first fight. As the van pulled away, sirens blaring, the rain outside blurred everything, except the fierce determination etched in their faces. The veterinary trauma team stood ready as the rescue van screeched into the clinic's emergency bay. The dog was rushed inside on a stretcher, her breathing barely registering. Dr. Leo, a lean, focused woman in her 50s, met them at the door. Vitals? She snapped. Weak pulse, low oxygen, Danny replied. Laceration on the front leg, signs of dehydration and starvation. Leo nodded once. Surgery bay now. As the gurney rolled away, Danny reached out and briefly touched the dog's paw. Hang in there, girl. The doors swung shut. All they could do now was wait. Time seemed suspended. The storm had ended, but inside, the emotional storm had only just begun. In the waiting room, silence stretched like wire. Danny sat hunched, holding her jacket in her lap, soaked hair clinging to her forehead. Jordan paced near the window, staring into the darkness. Monroe leaned against the wall, arms crossed. How long until we know something? Danny finally asked. Jordan exhaled. Could be hours. Could be less. The room buzzed faintly with fluorescent lights and distant barking from kennels. Time dragged. A nurse entered. We stabilized her, but she's not out of the woods. Relief flickered across their faces, followed by fresh worry. She's got internal bleeding. If she makes it through the next 12 hours, she has a chance. Later that night, Dr. Lyo stepped into the quiet room holding a clipboard. She's resting. Surgery went well, but we found older wounds. Scars, multiple fractures that healed poorly. Monroe stood. She was abused. Leo nodded solemnly. Long-term neglect, Possibly trauma from confinement or beatings. Danny closed her eyes, jaw clenched. She's survived hell, Jordan added softly. And she didn't bite, growl, nothing, just trusted us. Liao continued. She's got a microchip, we'll try to trace it. But no one seemed eager for answers. What mattered now wasn't who had failed her before. It was who wouldn't fail her again. Hours passed. The rain had stopped, but the team stayed. In a dimly lit kennel recovery room, the dog lay under blankets, bandages across her leg, IV line dripping slowly. Danny stood just outside, watching her sleep. She looked small now, like she shrank after the fight, she whispered. Monroe joined her, arms crossed, voice quiet. She didn't shrink, she just stopped pretending she was okay. The dog stirred, blinking briefly. Danny smiled. We need a name, she said softly. Jordan leaned in from the doorway. Hope, he said. That's what she gave us when we found her. The dog's eyes closed again, as if in agreement. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the clinic windows. A technician approached with an update. She made it through the night. Cheers broke out quietly. Danny covered her mouth with a trembling hand. She's a fighter, Jordan said, eyes damp. Monroe turned to the tech. Any info from the chip? The technician nodded. Registered to a breeder 2 towns over. No updates in 3 years. Danny shook her head. Forget them. They left her to die. Monroe replied, We're not letting her go back to that life. No chance. The dog, now officially Hope, blinked slowly from her bed, as if she knew everything had changed. 3 days later, Hope was still in critical care, though her vitals were slowly improving. In the break room, Danny sat with her head in her hands. She hadn't left the clinic since the rescue. I keep seeing her eyes, she whispered. When we found her, she didn't flinch, she just stared. Like she'd already accepted it. Monroe handed her a cup of coffee, because she knew help had finally come. Meanwhile, Jordan was reviewing old abuse reports linked to the breeder's name. There's a pattern, he muttered. 5 dogs reported missing, 3 abandoned, no charges ever stuck. Danny stood. We have to go after them, no more excuses. Monroe nodded. Then we fight this on both fronts, save her, and stop this from happening again. That afternoon, Monroe and Danny visited the breeder's listed address with an animal control officer. What they found was worse than expected. Behind a locked gate, several malnourished dogs barked weakly from rusted cages. The smell of decay hung in the air. We need a warrant, the officer said, snapping photos. Danny clenched her fists. They don't get another day to do this. Monroe pointed toward a tarp-covered shed. What's that? The officer peered through the slats. More crates, no ventilation. A chained Rottweiler whimpered nearby. Monroe stepped closer, her voice low and furious. We're shutting this place down, one way or another. Back at the clinic, Hope took her first steps, wobbly, unsteady, but determined. A vet tech steadied her as Danny entered and froze. She's walking, Danny whispered, eyes wide. Hope limped forward, tail twitching slightly. The room held its breath. Each step looked painful, but she didn't stop. Jordan appeared behind Danny. She's got the heart of a fighter. Danny dropped to her knees. You weren't supposed to survive that place, but you did. Hope rested her head in Donna's lap, a single fragile moment of trust. Monroe entered, holding up paperwork. The warrant's been signed. The timing felt cosmic. Hope was walking, just as the system finally started moving too. Armed with the warrant, Monroe led a multi-agency team back to the breeder's property. Officers forced the gate open as animal control moved in. Dozens of animals were rescued, some too weak to stand. Danny photographed everything. Document it all, Monroe instructed. In the shed, they found evidence of illegal breeding, records, cages, injection vials. The breeder was handcuffed without protest, eyes hollow. They're just dogs, he muttered. Monroe stepped forward, fury in her voice. No, they're survivors. That night, local news aired the story. Hope's footage played beside scenes of the raid. Public response was instant. Outrage, donations, support. Hope had become a symbol of pain, of justice, and of resilience. Later that evening, Monroe stood alone in the quiet clinic hallway, staring at the adoption notice board. Behind her, Hope slept peacefully in her crate. Danny approached quietly. "You okay?" Monroe nodded slowly. "I've done this for 15 years, never seen one fight so hard, then rest so peacefully." Danny looked at the board. "You think she's ready for a forever home?" Monroe turned toward her. "Not yet, but maybe someone's ready to fight for her now." Danny hesitated. "Maybe that someone's me." In the background, Hope stirred and let out a soft, content sigh. A silent promise hung in the air. This time she wouldn't be left behind. 1 week later, Hope stood in the small therapy yard behind the clinic, wearing a soft harness. Her legs were stronger now, but each step was slow, deliberate. Danny knelt a few feet away with a treat in her hand. "Come on, girl, just a little more." Hope paused, then shuffled forward, ears perked. A volunteer watching whispered, "She's doing it." Jordan leaned on the fence, grinning. "She's learning trust again." Hope reached Danny and gently took the treat. Danny whispered, "That's my girl." Behind them, a rainbow stretched faintly across the afternoon sky, like nature's way of marking the moment. For the first time in a long time, Hope wagged her tail. Later that day, Monroe and Danny reviewed Hope's progress file. "Weights up, infections gone. Wounds closing clean," Monroe said. Danny flipped the page. "And she hasn't barked once." Monroe nodded. "She might not know how, or she's waiting for the right moment." Jordan entered, holding a small box. "You'll want to see this." Inside was a collar with a heart-shaped tag engraved. "Hope, never again alone." Danny stared at it, eyes shimmering. "It's time, isn't it?" Monroe smiled softly. "Yeah, it is." Hope watched from her crate, tail swishing like she already knew something special was about to happen. The next morning, Danny signed the adoption papers. Her hands shook slightly. "Feels like I'm signing a treaty," she joked. Monroe replied, "It is, between her past and her future." Hope was brought out wearing her new collar, looking calm, even proud. The entire clinic staff gathered in the lobby, clapping softly. Danny crouched down and whispered, "Let's go home, Hope." Hope licked her hand. A nurse opened the door. Outside, sunlight spilled across the pavement. Hope hesitated, then stepped forward on her own. The crowd held its breath. Step by step, she walked into the light, as if shedding every shadow behind her. At Danny's small home, Hope explored each room with cautious curiosity. The living room had a dog bed waiting, surrounded by toys. "This is yours now," Danny said gently. Hope sniffed, circled once, then settled into the bed with a long sigh. Jordan arrived with groceries. "You sure you're ready for a roommate with trauma and a serious appetite?" Danny smirked. "She's already family." On the wall hung a photo of the rescue team: Monroe, Jordan, Danny, and Hope. It had been framed overnight. "That's the before," Danny said, pointing at the image. "Now we write the after." Hope let out the softest bark, her very first. That night, Danny stood on the porch with Hope beside her, both looking at the stars. Crickets chirped, a breeze rustled the trees. "I wish I knew what you'd been through," she whispered. Hope leaned into her side. "But I do know this. We're not going back there. Not ever." Hope glanced up at her, ears twitching. The porch light flickered, casting a golden halo around them. Inside, the soft hum of home wrapped around them like a promise. "You're safe," Danny said almost to herself. Hope closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. That was the sound of trust rebuilding, quiet, steady, and real. Weeks passed, and Hope's transformation became undeniable. Her coat had thickened, her gait steadied, and her eyes, once hollow, now held light. At the park, she jogged beside Danny, leash slack, tail gently wagging. Children pointed. "She's the one from TV." Danny smiled. "That's right. But she's just Hope now." Monroe arrived, leaning against a nearby bench. "She's healing faster than expected." Danny nodded. "She wants to be okay." Hope trotted toward Monroe and nudged her leg, a silent thank you. Monroe laughed. "Well, damn. Guess I'm part of her pack now." The moment was simple but monumental, evidence that trauma didn't win. Connection did. That evening, Danny hosted the full rescue team for dinner. The house buzzed with warmth and laughter. Jordan flipped burgers on the grill. Monroe sipped iced tea by the porch. Inside, Hope wandered freely, weaving between legs, tail high. "She doesn't hide anymore," Danny noted. "She greets people," Monroe added. "She's claiming her space." Mateo, the original volunteer who had first arrived on scene, held up his glass. "To the girl who reminded us why we do this." Glasses clinked. Hope barked once, playful and clear. Everyone turned. Danny laughed. "Well, she agrees." And for the first time, laughter didn't feel like borrowed joy. It felt earned. Late that night, Danny scrolled through old rescue photos on her laptop. Images of Hope, battered, broken, half hidden in shadows, flashed by. Her hand trembled as she stopped on one, Hope curled behind the broken beam. Danny's voice caught in her throat. "You were dying." A warm nose nudged her hand. Hope had climbed onto the couch and rested her chin on Donna's thigh. "But you didn't." Danny stroked her head. "Because you knew someone was coming." On screen, the photos faded to black. "I didn't just rescue you," Danny whispered. "You rescued me too." Hope closed her eyes, already home. Already whole. At the next rescue fundraiser, Hope took center stage. Monroe spoke to the crowd while Hope lay calmly at Danny's feet. "This is what survival looks like," Monroe said. "Not just escape, but growth, recovery, love." The crowd applauded softly. Behind the scenes, adoption applications poured in for other dogs. Hope's story had ignited something. Awareness, action, change. A child came forward and knelt beside her. "She's not scared?" he asked. Danny smiled. "Not anymore." Hope licked his hand. Cameras clicked, but for Danny and Hope, the world faded into the quiet, shared space of healing. It wasn't about fame. It was about presence. As the evening closed, Danny and Hope walked home beneath a sky full of stars. The path was quiet, lined with trees swaying in the breeze. Hope trotted slightly ahead, no longer tethered, only guided by faith. Danny let her roam, trusting that Hope would stay close. At the top of the hill, they stopped to rest. Danny looked out over the twinkling city lights and whispered, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Hope sat beside her, pressing gently into her side. No leash. No fear. Just two survivors standing in the calm after every storm. And somewhere in the silence, the past finally let go. Months later, Hope visited a local school with Danny as part of an animal advocacy program. Children sat cross-legged, wide-eyed, listening as Danny held up a photo of the abandoned house. This is where Hope was found. She was alone, injured and afraid. But she didn't give up. Hope lay quietly at her feet, wearing a vest labeled Therapy Dog in Training. A girl raised her hand. Was she mad at people? Danny smiled. Oh, she had every reason to be, but she chose to trust again. The room went silent. Hope stood and walked toward the students. One by one, small hands reached out to pet her. She didn't flinch. She leaned in. Back home that evening, Danny opened a letter addressed to Hope and Handler. It was from a woman who had seen Hope's story online. Inside was a photo of a rescued dog and a handwritten note. "You gave me the courage to adopt again." Danny showed it to Hope. You're changing more lives than you'll ever know. Hope wagged her tail and curled up on the rug. In her eyes, there was no concept of fame, only peace. On the windowsill sat a framed certificate, registered therapy dog, Hope. But Dani knew her title meant more than a document. Hope wasn't just certified, she was proof that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. That weekend, Dani and Hope joined a protest march against animal cruelty. Hundreds gathered, signs raised high. Hope wore a vest reading, "I survived. Let them live." Monroe, Jordan, and Mateo walked beside them. News cameras rolled, and onlookers clapped as Hope passed. Someone shouted, "That's her!" Hope didn't cower, she stood tall. At the podium, Dani spoke. "Hope isn't just a name, it's a promise that we'll fight for those who can't speak and believe in those who've been forgotten." The crowd erupted in applause. Hope barked once, a sound that echoed across the square like a call to action. That night, Monroe visited Dani for a quiet drink on the porch. Hope lay at their feet, belly full, ears twitching in the breeze. "You ever think about how close we came to losing her?" Monroe asked. Dani nodded. "All the time." Monroe handed over a small gift, Hope's original rescue photo, beautifully restored and framed. "To remember where she started," she said. Dani ran her thumb over the glass. "She doesn't need it, but I do." They sat in silence, not needing words. Hope shifted, resting her head on both their feet. In that stillness, there was no past, only presence. And the peace of survival. As dawn broke, the world stirred softly awake. Dani walked barefoot across the dewy grass, Hope padding beside her, no leash, just quiet loyalty. They paused at the hilltop where it had all changed. The sky bloomed orange and gold. "You ready for a new chapter?" Dani asked. Hope looked up, tail wagging. A soft breeze swept across the field. In that final moment, the camera closed in on Hope's eyes. Clear, focused, free. The abandoned house was gone. The pain, though etched in her, no longer defined her. What remained was something unbreakable. A survivor. A symbol. A heartbeat that refused to be silenced.